On March 8, 2014, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 took off, and then vanished without a trace. It was March 8, 2014, just past midnight in Kuala Lumpur. The city outside lay quiet, but at the international airport Malaysia Airlines Flight MH370 was preparing for what should have been a routine 6-hour journey to Beijing. 239 souls were aboard, passengers settling in for the overnight flight, flight attendants completing their final safety checks, and in the cockpit Captain Zahari Ahmad Shah and First Officer Farik Abdul Hamid running through pre-flight procedures. No one could have guessed they were stepping into one of the most baffling mysteries in aviation history, a puzzle that still haunts investigators, families, and experts more than a decade later. At 12:41 a.m., the Boeing 777-200ER pushed back from Gate C1. Everything looked normal. The aircraft, registration 9M MRO, was in excellent condition, barely 11 years old with a spotless maintenance record. Captain Shah, a veteran with over 18,000 hours of flying, was known for his calm professionalism. Beside him, Farik Hamid, younger and still completing his transition to the 777, brought about 2,700 hours of experience. As the big jet taxied toward runway 32R, the cabin filled with the rustle of seatbelts and the soft chime of crew announcements. Business travelers scrolled through phones, families soothed sleepy children, tourists leaned back for a red-eye ride to China. Among the passengers were 2 men holding stolen Austrian and Italian passports, a fact that would later ignite rumors but proved to be nothing more than a pair of Iranian asylum seekers trying to start new lives. At 12:42 the aircraft was cleared for takeoff. The twin Rolls-Royce engines wound up, thundering against the humid Malaysian night, and the plane lifted smoothly from the runway, banking northeast toward Beijing. For an hour and 27 minutes everything appeared routine. MH370 climbed to 35,000 feet, reported its positions as it crossed waypoints, and moved like a steady pulse across controllers' radar screens. At 1:07 a.m., the Aircraft Communications Addressing and Reporting System, known as ACARS, sent what would be its final automatic status message. No one noticed the silence that followed. 12 minutes later came a line that would echo in documentaries and courtrooms: "Good night, Malaysian 370. It was Farik Hamid's calm sign-off to Kuala Lumpur control as the flight prepared to enter Vietnamese airspace. 2 minutes afterward, the aircraft's transponder, the beacon broadcasting its altitude and speed, went dark. Instead of continuing northeast, the aircraft swung sharply left, cutting back across the Malay Peninsula. To controllers in Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh City, the blip's disappearance was odd but not immediately alarming. Communication lapses do occur, and radar can fail. They tried to raise the crew on emergency frequencies, asked other pilots to call, searched for secondary radar returns. Silence. As hours passed, anxiety mounted. Airline managers called the cockpit satellite phone again and again without answer. By dawn, the scale of the disaster began to unfold. Search crews initially scoured the South China Sea, the logical place given the last known radar fix. Ships and planes from several nations combed the waters, chasing satellite photos of suspected debris that turned out to be little more than driftwood or garbage. Then investigators learned something that flipped the map upside down. Malaysian military radar had tracked an unidentified target, same size, same speed as MH370, curving west across Malaysia and out over the Andaman Sea. The aircraft had not gone east at all. A stranger clue soon emerged from outer space. Even with its transponder dead, the aircraft's satellite data unit had continued to exchange hourly handshakes with an Inmarsat satellite over the Indian Ocean. These automatic pings, analyzed with Doppler shift calculations, traced a long arc stretching into the planet's most desolate waters. The evidence pointed south, into a wilderness of rolling swells thousands of kilometers from land. That revelation launched the largest, costliest search in aviation history. Naval vessels, survey ships, and long-range aircraft converged on the Indian Ocean. The environment they faced was unforgiving: storms that could rise without warning, waves tall as buildings, depths exceeding 4,000 meters. Autonomous underwater vehicles crisscrossed the seabed with sonar, mapping ravines and mountains no human eyes had seen. Towfish sonar arrays skimmed just above the ocean floor, sending back ghostly images of shipwrecks, lava domes, even century-old anchors, but number 777. Months stretched into years. Crews charted 120,000 square kilometers, an area the size of England, sometimes in seas so remote they were closer to Antarctica than to any city. They discovered relics of forgotten shipwrecks and mapped the terrain of an underworld few imagined, yet the ocean kept it secret. Then, in July 2015, hope stirred. On a beach of Réunion Island, a passerby spotted a barnacle-encrusted Flaperon. Tests confirmed it belonged to MH370, proof at last that the plane had ended in the Indian Ocean. More fragments followed, a horizontal stabilizer in Mozambique, cabin panels in Madagascar, even a suitcase torn and sun-bleached. Each artifact traveled thousands of kilometers on currents before reaching shore, each offering a slender clue to a violent end. But the main wreckage, and the voice and data recorders that might unlock the cockpit's last minutes, remained elusive. Beyond the official investigation, private experts kept refining models of where the fuselage might lie. Supercomputers simulated the drift of debris, oceanographers reconstructed wind fields, and engineers examined the barnacle growth on recovered pieces to estimate water temperature at impact. Proposals ranged from deep-sea drones capable of roaming the seabed for months to analyzing underwater microphone arrays for a crash acoustic signature. Synthetic aperture sonar painted high-resolution portraits of trenches and escarpments. Laser altimetry from satellites detected minute changes in sea surface height that might hint at wreckage below. Remotely operated vehicles, lowered on steel umbilicals, filmed the abyss with lights bright as stadium lamps, able to manipulate objects with robotic claws. These tools uncovered lost ships and ancient volcanic cones, expanding humanity's understanding of the ocean floor, yet the aircraft itself stayed hidden, perhaps just beyond the edge of mapped zones or tucked in the shadow of a cliff. While technology probed the depths, the tragedy reshaped aviation practice. Airlines adopted tighter tracking standards, broadcasting positions more frequently even over oceans. Discussions began about deployable recorders, black boxes that could detach and float after an accident. The disappearance highlighted weaknesses in global surveillance and led to reforms intended to ensure that no modern airliner could ever vanish so completely again. For the families, progress on paper offered little solace. In Beijing, Kuala Lumpur, and far beyond, relatives waited in limbo. Some campaigned tirelessly, pressing officials for renewed searches, raising funds for independent missions, or lobbying for improved flight safety. Others sought quiet memorials, plaques etched with names, flower-strewn vigils on windswept shores, lanterns released into night skies. Journalists recorded the rituals, the gatherings each March, the hotel conference rooms lined with photographs, the children growing up with only memories of parents frozen in time. Their longing for certainty remained raw, a wound reopened by every new rumor. Speculation never ceased. Hypotheses ranged from a catastrophic depressurization to crew incapacitation, from an onboard fire to more sinister theories of hijack or sabotage. Lacking the flight recorders, investigators leaned on satellite arcs and debris studies, narrowing possibilities but never closing the case. For all its sophistication, modern aviation still had an Achilles heel. In the immensity of an unmapped ocean, even a machine as large as a Boeing 777 could disappear. More than a decade later, MH370 endures as a story suspended between science and myth. The Flaperon on Réunion, the wing sections in Africa, the scuffed interior panels from Indian Ocean islands are fragments of a larger truth sealed under kilometers of water. To stand where one of those pieces washed ashore is to feel the reach of grief and mystery all at once, the hush of waves against coral, the gulls wheeling overhead, the horizon behind which answers sleep. Somewhere in that wilderness lies the plane, its recorders preserving voices from a night when ordinary people boarded a flight and vanished. Until that resting place is found, MH370 remains a symbol of how vast our world still is, and how determined we are to close the distance between loss and understanding.